living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
Hi there, friends. It's Dr. Carol, and welcome to Relationship Prescriptions. I've got something very practical and a bit different to share with you. Before we get into this content, let me ask you to think about your own life and ask yourself, what area would I like to be different? What in my life would I like to change? Do I wish were different? Maybe that is something like you'd like to lose some weight. Maybe you'd like to manage your money better. Maybe there's a relationship you would like to be improved. What in your life would you like to be better? And then hold that thought in your mind as you listen to this episode. My friend Katherine Lee recently taught about the process of change in our Fully Alive group, a fascinating and incredibly practical webinar. I want to share some important clips of that with you today, helping you understand the process of change. And as you listen to this, again, think of that area in your life that you wish were different. Make it real specific and keep that in mind as you listen to these stages of change. Katherine Lee is a personal development coach and a business strategist. She is currently the founder and CEO of Pure Hope Foundation, an organization helping strengthen families and support individuals who are coming out of the sex trafficking world, helping them change and develop into a new kind of life. Katherine Lee has been featured on some major national and international media programs. She's been on Oprah shows. She was on Oprah's show at least twice. She's an author and an internationally known speaker. So I know that you will find this conversation with Katherine Lee very encouraging, practical, and something that you can apply to that specific area of change that you are thinking about right now in your life. Now, as Katherine begins, she is setting up this understanding of the various stages of change. Whatever needs to be different, we don't get zapped from here to there. We can't make that leap all in one moment. And most of the time, God doesn't zap us from one place to another. There's a process. And understanding this is so full of hope and encouragement. So here is Katherine Lee explaining these stages of change, and especially the first stage. So listen here to a few minutes of Katherine Lee teaching.
Anybody out there wish that there was an area that you could change, or there is an area you're aware that you would like some changes? I mean, Dr. Carol just mentioned, relationally, financially, physically, emotionally, we all have areas that we would like to advance. And if we can do it without striving and condemnation, and what I mean by that is that we don't feel like it's all up to our strength, that's the striving part, or, oh, I'm so scared I'm going to get it wrong, right? With that perfectionism, I'm going to be condemned, I'm going to condemn myself or be condemned by others or God if I get it wrong. If we can have grace and pace through our changes, because the bottom line is that we, just like nature, everything God created is growing or dying. We have a natural drive to change, but we get awfully comfortable in our comfort zones in mediocrity. And yet internally, there's a desire to change, and those things that block us are typically because of perfectionism or striving, or we've been striving and we're exhausted. So I want to take all that away and press the reset button for all of us today, and maybe take in this philosophy of stages of change. This is not my original model. This stage of change model has been out there a long time, but I'm going to give a Katherine Lee spin, because I certainly have walked this journey in my own life and made dramatic changes in my life in lots of the arenas that we've just talked about. But I also am still in the process of something. So I want you to say to yourself, it's okay to practice the process. It's okay to be a part of that so we don't go into condemnation or into striving. So I'm going to take you through the stages of change. You can see all of them there together. Some of us like the big picture before we go into the detail. But I'm going to break these down now into individual stages while you're still seeing the big picture, because I think that is a core philosophy in change where, okay, what is the big picture, right? Why am I wanting to have this change? What is my motivation behind the change? Because we as human beings are motivated by pain and pleasure, right? That's bottom line, is we change because it gets painful enough typically, or the pull of pleasure, the promise of, if I make this change, things will be better. And that if that pull is strong enough, we'll do it. So the first thing before we even get started that is not on these slides, I want you to just take some time, commit to yourself that if there is an area of change, ask yourself why. Why do I want to change this? What is my motivation? And what is the pain motivator? And what is the pleasure motivator? You know, what is going to happen later if I don't change this that would be painful or that's already painful? But what's the promise of pleasure? What is that promise that God has, right? That if I make these changes, that I'm going to have a sense of satisfaction. I'm going to have a sense of progression and momentum, right? And I am going to have a sense of purpose. And so when you have had a chance to do that, then when you frame this process, it'll mean so much more. So let's go ahead and begin. The first stage of contemplation and change is called, first stage of change is called pre-contemplation. And you know that somebody is in this stage, right? If I like to say the 4Ds, if you see any of the 4Ds, they're deaf to the topic, right? La, 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 la. Have you ever been with somebody that you can see that change would benefit them, but anytime the topic is brought up of the area of change, it is literally like they didn't hear it. They will change the topic like that. Or maybe they're defensive. The topic comes up and they push back. Or they're in denial. They genuinely do not see that change. Or they're not just defensive, they're defiant. They're loud and not just pushback, but they're angry. They're not just having a nudge like I'm not ready, they are angry. And when somebody is in this stage, right, you don't know you're there probably because you're in denial, you're deaf to the topic. But you may want to gauge yourself, like if a topic comes up, do you get defensive or do you repel back a little bit and push back hard in that defiant stage? Well, that might be a good indicator that, that might be an area that I would benefit from changing it. Doesn't mean that's always the case, but it's a good indicator.
So are you asking yourself, what is the reason that I think I should change or want to change or am now starting to think maybe about change? What is the pain that not changing is bringing you right now? Or what pain is not changing going to bring in the future? And is there some pleasure? What is the reason? What's the why that you are now starting to think about change? Again, remember that specific area that you thought about at the beginning that you think you would like to be different in your life. Imagine how things would be different if you did make that change, and hold on to that view of what could be. And now here Katherine talks about the next stage of change.
If we go from pre-contemplation into contemplation, I like to call this the yeah, but stage. And what I mean by that is you say, yeah, I know I need to change, but, and that word comes that creates a stop when we say but. And what's interesting about this is what I say, this is where shame can reside. In fact, I would say most people are in this phase, and shame is what is keeping them stuck, because they know that they want to change, and sometimes they should change. And I always said, let's not should on each other, right? We don't want should equal shame. And so we don't want to should on ourselves or should on other people. But what we can say is, I desire to change. I want to change. Maybe you don't really want to, but you want to. You're aware there's a change. And if we begin to give ourselves grace in this place, that is when we can begin to move and look at the reasons and excuses that are standing in our way, because what follows the but, the yeah, but, are all of the reasons and excuses. Now, the reason why I say reasons and excuses is there's two different categories here. One is excuses. Those are made up obstacles that are in our way that we are allowing to be there. And if we will identify them and say, you know what, and be truthful to ourselves and say that is an excuse, I no longer am going to allow that obstacle to stand in my way. We can change it like that. Now, reasons are real obstacles that stand in our way. So, for instance, I recently got a knee injury, and it was a real reason that I could not do my normal exercise, which I love to walk. Walking is my favorite thing, and even swimming at the right time of year. But I literally, because of this injury, I could not do either thing. That was a real reason. It was a real obstacle standing in my way of my desire to continue to do the best for my body. And so I had to say, oh, that's a real obstacle. So the problem is I allowed it to become an excuse to not do anything. So it's interesting, the real reasons can become obstacles. And so we want to just be careful, because what I could have said is, you know what, my knee is hurt, I can't walk, right? But I can lift some weights with my upper body, right? I can do some certain kind of physical that doesn't do weight bearing on that knee. There were things I could do cardiovascularly. I mean, literally a chair walk. You'd be amazed at how that can make a difference. So just pay attention to your excuses, get rid of them, and don't allow your real reasons to create excuses. Instead, identify in the next phase, which is called preparation, identify what those obstacles are, come up with plans, and get them out of the way so that you could go on to the next stage.
Oh, can you see yourself? Maybe you're in that pre-contemplation or contemplation stage. Katherine then talked about preparation, getting rid of the obstacles, making a concrete plan. And Katherine explained how in our brain, when you are making a plan concrete, very, very specific, your brain responds to that differently. The concrete plan that you make in going through this change needs to engage your senses, imagining what it would be like. For example, imagining putting on your shoes and getting outside and walking for 30 minutes, or imagining setting up a savings account and depositing money in there every paycheck. What would that look like, feel like? What is it going to actually be as you make this change? And then in this next clip, Katherine talks about what may be the single most important factor in setting yourself up for success. And that has to do with who are the people who can support you. Here's this next clip.
I had the privilege of working as a business strategist on an incredible global health initiative with Dee Eastman, who was the head, and Rick Warren, and some phenomenal doctors like Dr. Hyman and Amen. And one of the things that was surprising, I think, to everyone was that when we looked at the 5 pillars of the Daniel Plan, it was food, fitness, faith, focus, meaning goal setting and mindset that we're talking about. So food, fitness, focus, faith, and then the final one was friends. And when we looked at the impact of people's ability to change, to have success, friends was the greatest point of impact. Somebody that's there with you, that's cheering you on, but also calling you accountable. And what I mean by that is you can have somebody say, that's all right, that's okay, we're going to beat them anyway, right? It's good to have a cheerleader. They love you no matter what. But you also need people like a coach would say, right? Like, that's not all right, that's not okay. I mean, the all right part is grace, right? So maybe it's still all right and it's okay, but we're going to beat them anyway. We're not going to go all the way back to the beginning if there is an adjustment. And accountability says, I'm here for you, and you're willing to be seen, and you're willing to have friends that are there for you, to support you, not to shame you, not to compare yourself, because comparison is emotional cancer, right? Their journey is their journey, your journey is your journey. It is not for comparison. It is for to have cheerleaders and coaches that will help you along the way. And you'll see why that's important in just a minute. So we've gotten rid of the yeah buts, right? We've gotten that preparation, the reasons and excuses are torn up, and the obstacles We're aware that there are obstacles. We've had a plan to overcome them, and then we go into action with accountability, and we set ourselves up for early wins. And what I mean by that is we do things that 100% we feel confident we can get done. Notice I said I'm going to start walking 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week. Now, I used to walk an hour a day, 5 to 6 days a week, but I don't know if my knee can sustain that. And to be honest, I don't know if where I am in shape can sustain that. So my early win is I know 100% for sure, even if the weather is bad, I can walk around my house for 30 minutes, right? I may not do it for an hour. That would be kind of boring, but I could walk around my home for 30 minutes. So you want to get an early win that you say 100%, no matter what, I can do this thing. Because another reason why we typically don't succeed when we're changing is we put way too much pressure on ourselves and we make the goal way too big that our body, our mind, our heart, our soul can't fully engage and align because change takes time. And I'm not going to get into all the brain wiring, but just know you're literally creating new neural networks. You're having to fight old patterning in the brain. And so you want to create things that you can give yourself credit and say that it's a win. Okay, so always ask yourself when you set your first set of action steps, have that accountability, but also ask yourself the question, am I 100% clear that I can do this, barring some major emergency? But am I 100% sure that I can get this done? And then you get that high of accomplishing, and you can build on that and build on that until you're where you want to be.
So you have taken action, you've gotten some early wins, and then there's a maintenance phase. Katherine talks about how it takes about 90 days for new patterns to replace old patterns in our brain and in our habits. You can set up an initial habit in about 21 days, but it takes 90 days to actually make those new patterns real and more or less permanent. But, and here's a but, as any of us make changes in any area of our life, it's almost without fail that we will come up to new roadblocks. You might call it a relapse. Katherine has a great way of reframing relapse. You'll find this encouraging.
This word relapse, a lot of people don't like that term. So just pretend like I crossed that out. Instead, I put setback, because a setback is a setup for a comeback. I've heard that said, and I think it is so true, that if you realize that change is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's more like the cha-cha-cha, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's normal change because our brain is trying to sync. You're trying to figure out how it works in your environment. People around you are adjusting to the change. All of those things, we have fallen into other habits that we're replacing. And so how does a relapse turn into a setback that's a setup for a comeback, right? Because it's just a setback. And relapse can become the greatest teacher. So failure, that we typically call a relapse a failure, it is not a failure, it's just teacher, right? But that does not happen unless a setback is a setup for a comeback, if you will step back and ask yourself 3 questions to allow failure or the relapse to become a teacher. And here's the 3 questions. Ready? If you're not taking notes anywhere else, this is the place to take notes. So here it is. What went wrong? Now that you've had an experience, you're able to see, oh, wow, I set myself up for failure. I set the goal too big, or I didn't realize this thing was going to come in, and I need to factor into that when I'm creating my new plan. Because what typically happens is we get in, we go through contemplation into preparation, we go into action, we have a failure or a relapse, something goes wrong, and most of us go from action back into either pre-contemplation or contemplation, where we're like, la, 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 I tried, I failed again, I can't do it. Or we go into, yeah, but I tried and I failed. Yeah, but shame, 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 shame. If we can instead go from what went wrong, right? Oh, okay, here's my opportunity to learn. We go right back into preparation and we look at that action plan and those obstacles that have come in, and we reset a new action plan. That's the power, because then we can say, what would I do differently next time? Now you've got power. You've created power out of this situation. And then the third is who can support me? Now, this is going back to the friends component from the Daniel plan that I talked about. That is key for two reasons. Number one, we're not meant for isolation, right? Solitude is a beautiful thing, right? We all need our solitude, but isolation actually atrophies the brain. Like the brain does not grow. It creates a lot of problems for us to be in isolation. And in change, the more support we have, the greater ability to change there is. And so if we say, who can support me? Not only do you get the power of accountability of coaches and cheerleaders, but the truth is you may not know what went wrong. You may not know what you could do differently next time. And of course, my first cheerleader coach I want to go to is God, for that space of grace that we talked about at the beginning, and to say, okay, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, not all in my power. I'm going to use the frontal lobe of my brain and I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to use community that God gave us to support me. But God, I want you to empower me. And if there's any place that I'm trying to do this on my own, show me. And you get stronger and stronger with every setback or relapse, because you'll just have a comeback, which means you're stronger and you know more.
Could you see yourself and the area in your life that you want to change as you listen to that conversation with Katherine Lee about the stages of change? I hope you could see where you are in this process, which stage you may be in. And more importantly, I hope that this was encouraging so that you can understand how you can move to the next stage of change effectively. And I want to remind you of what Katherine Lee said about friends, about the people around you, that she and the other experts who were working with her in this personal development plan, the single most important factor in whether or not people were effective in making change and keeping that change was the friends, the people that they had around them. That is a huge reason why we have opened and are building our online community, the Fully Alive group, an encouraging online community where you can talk about anything, you can get questions answered, you can be as anonymous as you wish, but you can also get personalized feedback and support. This is an example of the kind of experts that we have inside the Fully Alive group regularly. Katherine Lee is only one. Every month we'll have an expert or two sharing specific things that can be helpful in your growth, in overcoming problems. Next month, the focus in the Fully Alive group is going to be overcoming anxiety, depression, fear, dealing with our thoughts, our mental processes, finding that strong mind that God promised us. Remember that scripture in 1 Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. What are the steps necessary where you can experience that sound mind? That's our topic for the whole month of July. If you'd like to find out more, I would love you to be a member of the Fully Alive group. You can go to fullyalivegroup.com, find out more information, and if you have questions, I would love to hear from you. Click on the contact page or send me an email, drcarol@drcarolministries.com. I read each one personally. I'd love to hear your comments or your questions, and love to have you as a member in the Fully Alive group. And until next time, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol. Our purpose is to provide trustworthy resources that help you and others live fully alive in every way as God intended. If you would like to help others experience transformation in their lives and relationships, we invite you to partner with us. Text the word GIVE, that's G-I-V-E, to the number 512-980-1620. Or visit our website at drcarolministries.com/donate to make a one-time contribution or monthly gift. Your financial support allows us to expand our message and to help others. Thank you so much.